there is no good age at which to lose anybody close to us. But when you're a young person, I think, up until that point, I still had that gleeful ignorance of mortality that,
Right.
We all felt like we were going to live forever then.
Welcome, friends, to the 4th season of Heart to Heart with Michael, a program for the bereaved community. Our purpose is to empower members of our community. This season, we're looking at grief in its various forms, and we'll be looking at the role of trauma as it affects grief. Today's program is Rebuilding Life After the Loss of a Sibling. With us today is our guest, Jay Handlin. In segment 1, we'll meet Jay and learn about his unique lifestyle. In the second segment, we'll learn about the grief he suffered when he lost his brother. And in the last segment, Jay will talk about how losing his brother and having a special needs daughter has shaped him to be the person he is. Jay Handlin's brother, Mitchell Howard Handlin, was born April 5th, 1955, and died April 8th, 1976. Jay was 17 when Mitch died. Mitch was painfully smart, which, combined with a dearth of athletic ability and a bit of social awkwardness, made public school in Queens tough. He hit his stride in high school, where academics were worth something, and also turned himself into a varsity fencer, then really excellent in college. He was a university scholar at NYU and planned to be a biblical archaeologist. He was on his junior year abroad at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Israel when he died in an automobile accident with his girlfriend and her family. He was, at that time, the happiest he'd been in his life. He was, among other things, intense, deeply religious, loyal, loving, and a self-made Israeli folk dance expert. A whiz at languages, studying biblical Hebrew, Arabic, and ancient Greek, all in the same semester at NYU. A truly righteous person, and the greatest reader Jay has ever known. Along the way, Mitch studied karate at a Torah dojo and performed in musical theater. He always planned to make Aliyah to Israel, and he is buried there. Jay is a husband and a father. Jay has been married for over 28 years. He and his wife, Laura, have one daughter, Rachel, who has Down syndrome. She was fully mainstreamed in school, and in May 2020, she will be graduating with her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in photography. Laura lives with Rachel in California. Jay lives in New York City. Jay, thank you so much for coming onto the program.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
How is your life structured now? Because it seems quite different from the kind of life most married people live. And I'm referring to 3,000 miles between you and the rest of your family.
When Rachel was born, nobody told us, hey, your daughter with Down syndrome might go to college one day. So as that became possible, along with that came certain costs that we might not have expected along the way, like private college tuition and such. And so where I was working at the time wasn't cutting it. And professionally, I'm a lawyer, and I'm originally from New York, and I started my career in New York. And professionally and financially, the only way to make it work and get all the bills paid was that I relocated back to New York to be a New York lawyer again. And so I spend almost all the year in New York. Rachel and Laura spend most of the year in California. I get out there as often as I can. Birthdays, holidays, things like that. And and thankfully we live in the age of FaceTime.
I think we're missing something. Where were you living when the decision to go to college in California happened? Because it wasn't in California.
We lived this weird tri-coastal existence. We lived in California for about a dozen years, and then for various reasons, we picked up and we moved out to Hawaii, where there is still a house where I pay the mortgage. And my wife and daughter get back there on school breaks, and if I'm lucky, I will get to spend a week or a week and a half there every year. I was living and lawyering in Hawaii at the time, and Hawaii's a glorious place, but certainly in the legal profession, you don't earn out there what you earn doing the same thing in a major mainland market like New York. So the lawyering in Hawaii just wasn't covering the bills. Just when it became clear that Rachel was going to be able to go to college, but no matter what, I was going to make too much for her to get any meaningful financial aid. So just the numbers didn't pencil out anymore. So I had to pick up and go someplace where they did. And that was back to New York.
Yeah, but in a way, I think it's kind of a joyous burden. I mean, who would have expected that Rachel would go to university, right, and come out with a degree?
We certainly would not have planned for the family to end up in very different places like this.
Sure.
But when it became clear that Rachel was going to be able to go to college, then, we always viewed our job as you do what parents do, which is to do whatever you need to do to give your kids the opportunities, to maximize their abilities. So
and I think you're very fortunate that you could do that. And so, it's a joyous problem to have when you can solve it. And your solution was extraordinarily creative. I don't think it would even have occurred to me to do something like that. That's terrific, and I can only applaud you for that.
Thank you. I will say it's a good thing that life comes at you one day at a time, because it's easier to make these decisions one day at a time, as opposed to if somebody had posed to us the day she was born, here are all the things that you're going to end up doing.
Yeah.
Do you choose to do all of these? That would have been a lot harder than just what do we have to do today?
While we're here, let's talk about Rachel's early years. What was it like long before college was an option?
She was born in New York. She's very proud of telling people that she and I were both born at the same hospital in New York City, Mount Sinai Hospital. She was 4.5 months old when we moved to California. We moved to California. I took a job as a lawyer at the Walt Disney Company.
Okay.
And so she really grew up in California. She moved from Manhattan to Manhattan Beach. Very early on, we kind of learned as much as we could and figured out sort of what she would benefit from in terms of therapies, early intervention, things like that. And we got her everything we could. Sometimes that was easier than others. Sometimes that was radically difficult. And along the way, we hired, notwithstanding that I'm a lawyer, we hired an education rights lawyer whose presence was critical at certain times. But from the beginning, we insisted that Rachel be fully included in the general ed classroom with typical kids. And I think we get to say that was the right thing to do.
Let me ask you this. You're separated by 3,000 miles, Hawaii to the side. You're still in New York and they're still in California. How do you make your marriage work like that?
It's the same thing about, getting up every day and and handling what life throws at you today. Listen, as you know, you've also been married a while.
32 years and counting.
Marriage is a lot of work. And,
yes, it is.
And at different times, it's different kinds of work. I think there are probably times that my wife and I would both agree that it may actually be easier on us that we're not in the same place. There's other times when unquestionably we would rather be in the same place. Marriage, for all of us who manage to stay married, especially over a long period of time, it's always a work in progress. But I think we're an adaptable species, and I guess Laura and I are adaptable people.
I don't want to think of Down syndrome as adversity. It is a sort of adversity. It's also a sort of a joy. But do you think that centering your life on dealing with Rachel and helping Rachel, that's what sort of binds you together? Because I can definitely say that's what kept us really, really solid all those years.
Yeah, absolutely. No matter what is going on with the rest of the relationship, it has always given us kind of this major focus. And, on any given day, we might or might not be agreeing about something, but God help anybody who is getting in our daughter's way.
Tonight Forever by the Baby Blue Sound Collective.
I think what I love so much about this CD is that some of the songs were inspired by the patients.
Many listeners will understand many of the different songs and what they've been inspired by. Our new album will be available on iTunes, Amazon.com, Spotify.
I love the fact that the proceeds from this CD are actually going to help those with congenital heart defects.
Enjoy the music.
Home Tonight Forever.
Hi, my name is Jamie Alcroft, and I just published my new book, The Tin Man Diaries. It's an amazing story of my sudden change of heart as I went through a heart and liver transplant. I can think of no better way to read the Tin Man Diaries than to cuddle up in your favorite Hearts Unite the Globe sweatshirt and your favorite hot beverage, of course, in your Hearts Unite the Globe mug, both of which are available at the Hug Podcast Network online store, or visit heartsunitetheglobe.org.
This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed in the podcast are not those of Hearts Unite the Globe, but of the hosts and guests, and are intended to spark discussion about issues pertaining to congenital heart disease or bereavement.
You are listening to Heart to Heart with Michael. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on Michael's program, please email him at michael@hearttoheartwithmichael.com. Now, back to our program.
This just in, literally, you got an email. Tell us what you just got.
Over the break, I told Michael that my daughter Rachel is in the process of applying to MFA programs, Masters of Fine Art programs, for which the programs require students to interview, and most of the applicants don't necessarily get interviews. So she just got an email inviting her to interview at NYU.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you, which is a big deal. And to boot, NYU is also where my brother went to college and where later on my mom actually worked for 10 years. That's some pretty great news.
And of course, you'll be in the same state. You'll be in the same house.
She's not accepted yet, so
I know. But if she is, look at the possibilities.
Absolutely,
that's great. We're going to switch gears very heavily right now. I want you to talk more about your brother now. Tell me about the day you found out that Mitchell died.
I was a junior in high school, and at the same time, I was attending the Hebrew high school, continuing my Jewish education. The principal of the school, who was also the director of the camp program at which Michael and I met, actually came to the class and fetched me out of class, drove me back to my parents' apartment. My father was out of town. He was in Florida visiting his brother, and my mother was there. All I was told in that car ride was that there had been an accident. But when I got to the apartment, my mother told me that Mitch had died in a car accident in Israel. And over the next hours and days, I learned more about it. There is no good age at which to lose anybody close to us. But when you're a young person, I think, up until that point, I still had that gleeful ignorance of mortality that,
right.
We all felt like we were going to live forever then. And that's a heck of a way to learn that it's not so.
You somehow expect that it only happens to older people.
It was profoundly disruptive and life-changing, and I still live with it.
And yet, just a few months later, you were at camp, and I was late to camp because I had been in Israel at the beginning of the summer. And I can't remember that you were outwardly different. So let me ask you the question. 17 years old you're no longer a kid. You're not quite an adult. So how did that loss affect you in ways that maybe we're not thinking about, those of us who knew you?
As you said, indeed. So Mitch died early April, and then the end of June, I guess, we went to camp, and off I went. I didn't know how to talk to people about it. In recent years, I've had a high school reunion, and I remember talking with some people, and I asked them, because I remember very little kind of the immediate aftermath. But I asked them if they knew, and if I had told them what had happened, and they didn't know, which probably meant that I didn't tell people, or it just, so over the years I got very good at not announcing this, because it, especially at that age, I mean, kind of even now, our culture certainly does not teach people how to talk about death. But certainly at 17, if it came up in a conversation, it was just an immediate conversation killer. And everybody just felt very sorry and very awkward, and people would stop talking.
Nobody knows how to deal with it at that age. I mean, you have to, but your friends felt that maybe they didn't. On the other hand, I knew it happened because my brother was there in Israel in the same program. I came to camp. I don't even think I said, I'm sorry. I just looked at you like, in like Home Improvements. I kind of went, and you looked at me and kind of went, huh? And it was over. And that was it. But I didn't realize that other people didn't necessarily know. And I didn't see you, as far as I can remember now, looking back from age 60 to 17, I don't remember you being outwardly any different about it. And at some point, I stopped giving it any kind of thought because it didn't look like you were. In other words, it just passed over as a normal thing. And I think really what happens is that, trauma sometimes has its way of hiding to come out at a better time. Did it hit you harder maybe after camp, after the summer?
I think it did hit me pretty hard. But so at camp, as will tend to happen, I got into a relationship, and I had a girlfriend who was very, very, very special to me at the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that I opened up to her a lot more about this stuff than I did to anybody else. I spent a lot of time just with her that summer, and I think that she and that relationship really helped me hold things together in a way. I'm sure it would have been a lot harder for me had I not had that. So I did have, another year before going away to college. So by the time, it's certainly something that my parents and I talked about. They would have been happier had I stayed home for school. But at the same time, I had, a great opportunity to go to Brandeis, and my parents were all about, seeing their kids achieve through education and all. So and looking back, I don't think I fully appreciated at the time just how difficult it was for them, but they managed to muster themselves together enough to say, yes, absolutely, go and do, and just call us more often. But
they would have said that anyway.
Yes.
You don't call. What's up?
Yes.
Hey, what's up? Before we go to break here, you told us earlier in a pre-interview that your daughter is named for your brother.
Middle names. Mitch's full Hebrew name was Shalom Michael Tzvi Ben Yerachmiel Halevi, but conversationally Michael. Okay. Rachel's middle name is Michal. And yes, if we were to get into the etymology, I'm sure that you or others could tell me how they're really the derivation of the two names are actually different. But
I have a feeling they're exactly the same, because my name is Michael, and Michael means Mikamo Ha'el, who is like God.
Right.
And Michal is just a shortened version of that. All the elements are in that as well.
Well, that was the thinking. So her middle name is Michal, and specifically chosen because he was Michael.
Does she show anything in her life that reminds you of him?
That's a really interesting question that I don't know that anybody has ever asked me. When she decides to do something, she is relentless, tireless in its pursuit, and he certainly was. And again, for very different reasons. He did, growing up, have some difficulties, mostly socially, which actually she's a very, very social kid. But he had to work harder at certain things, at many things, than most of his peer group did, and she certainly has. And again, I think both of them just set their minds to something, and nothing and nobody, stood in their way.
Well, I would say, from having read his bio, that her quest for education and his desire for education, although there may be in different areas. The drive, I think, is very much the same. And I like that because, in Judaism, a name isn't just a name, it's who you are. It defines the person. And so you called him righteous, and his name means who was like God. And Michael was an angel. So she seems to have that same drive that he had. And the name could be very important there. And I really, really appreciate that.
I appreciate your take on that, which frankly is broader and deeper than probably ours was. I like to think you have that right. And one thing I know absolutely for sure, and I have told her this many times, is that I know that he would be enormously proud of her.
I was 5 hours old when I had my first surgery.
Wow.
The only advice I can really give someone like that is to be there for your family.
This is life, and you have two choices. You either live it, or you sit in a corner and cry.
I am Anna Jaworski, and the host of Heart to Heart with Anna. Join us on Tuesdays at noon Eastern Time on Spreaker or Blog Talk Radio. We'll cover topics of importance for the congenital heart defect community. Remember, my friends, you are not alone.
If you've enjoyed listening to this program, please visit our website, heartsunitetheglobe.org, and make a contribution. This program is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a nonprofit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to educate, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at congenitalheartdefects.com for information about CHD, hospitals that treat CHD survivors, summer camps for CHD families, and much, much more.
You are listening to Heart to Heart with Michael. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our program, please send an email to Michael Liben at michael@hearttoheartwithmichael.com. Now, back to Heart with Michael.
Jay, many people who have a child with special needs go through a period of grief or mourning after the perfect child they were supposed to have isn't there. On top of that, you lost your brother when you were a teenager. So how much of that has come together to help define you as you are now?
People talk about formative events in your life.
Yeah.
And it would be harder for me to think of anything else in my life, including with love and respect to my wife, our marriage, anything more impactful in my life than Mitch's death and Rachel's birth, and in particular, Rachel being born, and lo and behold, she has Down syndrome, which we didn't know about before she was born, and kind of everything that has flowed from that. So yeah, those are two enormously life-changing, life-shaping things. It would be a shorter list of things where that hasn't impacted my life. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I have no idea who or what I'd be absent those two things. I'd be somebody completely different.
That reminds me, my daughter, among all the other issues that she had, she was also a heart patient. And I remember in the early days of the internet, when we were all on listservs and we were trading emails back and forth every day, somebody asked the question, if you could wave a magic wand and erase the heart condition, would you do it? And before I ask you your answer to that question, let me tell you that a number of the parents said, no, we wouldn't. Because if you changed my child's heart condition, if you made my child healthy in a way that we didn't have, you would change everything as to who my child is, and by extension, who I am. And that my child is defined in some sense by what my child has, and that defines me. So if we could wave a magic wand and take away Down syndrome, what would you do?
You're not the first person to ask that, but even having heard the question before, I don't have a good answer for it.
Well, there is no right answer. Okay?
No.
I kind of set you up to fall there. There's no right answer, and some people would gladly give it away and have a child back without it. And let's be clear on that.
No, but so on the one hand, what do parents wish for their children, right? I would wish for things that make her path smoother, easier. I would wish for her that she didn't have to work harder than everybody else to learn the same stuff. But it is fundamentally intertwined with who she is. Without the extra chromosome, I have no idea who she would be. I have no idea if her personality would be anything like what it is now. I just don't know. In many, many respects, with struggle comes growth. So
no, let me help you out there with something, because you said it. Struggle brings growth, and I've always said, as a parent, having a child with special needs showed us who we could be. But I think that it also works on the child. I think that Rachel has become what she can be to the best of her ability, and maybe we don't even know where that limit is yet, right?
That's absolutely true.
No, I tend to agree with you. I'm sort of in between on that question, but I'm sort of more with the people who would not take the magic wand. It also, as much as it defined her, it defined you. Look at you. Look what you're doing. You are living bi-coastal, and you can do it because the drive to do it is for her. Final question. Knowing what you know now, and if you could talk to 17-year-old Jay, what would you tell him?
Two things occur to me. Number one, particularly that first summer right after Mitch had died, I would tell 17-year-old Jay to be more mindful of his parents. And just because I had managed to sort of get away and find this haven that let me gather myself and recover a little bit and all, I did not adequately recognize what they were going through and how unbelievably traumatic losing him was to them. And I was really, truly, I was so caught up with kind of saving myself that I did not focus enough on them and how hard it was for them. And as a result, you joked before about how parents, and particularly the classic Jewish parent or Jewish mother, will say, you never write, you never call. But really, truly, with the benefit of hindsight, I could and should have been much better to them, much more solicitous of them and what they were going through at that time, and I wish I had. I like to think that in subsequent years I did a better job, but right then I was really kind of swallowed up in my own thing, and I wish I had done that better. That's number one. Number two, I would probably tell myself over time to give myself a little bit more of a break. For a long time, I had this notion that I was now, in my brother's absence, that I was kind of living for two people, that I was responsible not only for myself, but for filling in the gap that he left in the universe. And I mean, that's not a fair burden to put on anybody, and it's certainly not a fair burden to put on a kid at 17 or 18 or 20 or whatever.
Let me give you some advice as a parent who lost a child. Your parents knew what you're feeling. They knew that you were healing yourself. They might have felt that they were a little disconnected from you, and they forgive you.
Yeah, I think after that we all did a pretty good job being good to one another to help us all hold all of us together.
Jay, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thanks, Michael. This has been pretty great. Thank you.
That concludes this episode of Heart to Heart with Michael. Please join us at the beginning of the month for a brand new podcast. Please take this opportunity to go over to Patreon and become a member of the Heart to Heart team and help support this and other programs. I'll talk with you soon, and until then, remember, moving forward is not moving away.
Thank you again for joining us. We hope you have gained strength from listening to our program. Heart to Heart with Michael can be heard every Thursday at noon Eastern Time. We'll talk again next time when we'll share more stories.